So first of all, I want to welcome everyone to this webinar, and I hope that you're going to find it useful. My name is Michelle Gregory. I'm the TUC Events Manager. I'm responsible for the production of our annual Congress and other large-scale events, and I provide general advice to colleagues in the TUC and to our affiliates about organising events. Just to say, we've had a difficult year, and we've had to adapt to working digitally much faster than we had intended. So I think that applies to us all. Unions rely heavily on our conferences to keep democracy running and to build activists, and the networking part is obviously very important. This has been a real challenge though, when people have been unable to meet physically. So this year, some of the unions cancelled or postponed. At the TUC, we decided to make Congress into a hybrid event, and we had a webinar on that previously. There's actually a blog on the Digital Lab website if you want to have a refresh of what we discussed at that time. So today, I'm really pleased that we're going to be looking at what others have done this year. So Mike Joslin from the NEU will be talking to us about how they built their own software to enable a very specific type of event. So welcome to Mike. And also Sarah Wiktorski from the STUC will talk about how they ran their Congress this year. So that's going to be really interesting, and welcome to Sarah too. And then just to finish up, to say we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. As you can see, we're running this event as a webinar. There'll be a chat box, which if you want to put in comments live, my colleague John will try and respond. Anything that we can't respond to live, we'll follow up afterwards as appropriate. And then for specific questions to Mike or Sarah, we're asking you to drop questions in to the Q&A box, and there should be a button at the top of your screen. You should be able to see that. So what I'm proposing is that Mike will go first to do his presentation, followed by Sarah, and then we'll take any Q&A after both presentations. So over to Mike, and I hope everyone finds this useful and enjoys this webinar. Thank you. Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks to everyone here today who's come along to have a listen, and thanks to the TUC for putting this on, because I think it's a very valuable experience for us all to share what's been happening this year. So my name is Mike Joslin. I am the lead marketing officer at the National Education Union. My remit is around digital engagement and internal and external marketing. We've been working on a program of data, tech, and engagement at the NEU that involves how we use data in our campaigns, how we use technology in our campaigns, how we produce technology, which technology we use, and how it all fits together to get the best deal for our members and for our campaign priorities. So we've built a suite of our own technology called NEU Tools. It ranges from a Facebook targeting tool to organising software within the workplace, our own text and phoning platform, and so on. But one of the tools is NEU Democracy, which I'm going to speak about today. So I think it would be remiss of me just to say thank you to David Kimber, who's the head of events at the NEU, for supporting this kind of experimentation with new software, which is very brave. It was very brave of him for a completely new conference to build a platform within 2 months. So thanks to him, and thanks to David Wilson, the Assistant General Secretary, Helen Watson, the Head of Comms, and our General Secretaries, Kevin Courtney and Mary Boosted, for their support in pushing this kind of technology. So the story of NEU Democracy is that, as were probably most of you listening, our annual conference was cancelled, and we had to work out what to do. Now, we've had a Zoom program at the NEU this year. It's had over 150,000 of our members on it, and we've become quite proficient at Zoom, but the voting functionality simply wasn't able to cope with what we needed it to cope with, in terms of security, in terms of weighted votes, in terms of distribution and all this kind of thing. And we looked personally at the software available and decided that there wasn't one available that met our needs. So we thought that we should buy one. So we should make one. Sorry, using a developer called ChangeLab, who have developed most of our other technology and are at the cutting edge, I think, of this kind of technology development. So a proposal was put by David Kimber to our executive, who voted to invest and to have our conference in October on Zoom using NEU Democracy. And I'll just explain briefly how that works shortly. But I think what will be the most useful thing for me to do at the start is to do a product demo and just show you how NEU Democracy works. So I'm going to share my screen with you now. So you should be able to see the front end of NEU Democracy. If there's a problem with seeing it, please, if someone else could just say there's a problem with my screen, but it shouldn't be at the moment. So how NEU Democracy works? It works. It's a web app. So that means that it's not on the App Store. It works via a unique link, and you can access it on a desktop, preferably, but it also works on mobile. So there were photos of some of our delegates sitting on the sofa voting on mobile, which was good for me, good to see, because they obviously were enjoying using the software. And in the end, at our conference, we had 70,000 votes that were registered and recorded. So that's good. But it works by unique link, and I'll show you how that works shortly. What you're seeing at the moment is our dashboard. So essentially, we can just set up any conference at any time. When we had the conference in October, we didn't have this dashboard, but we are developing it and moving forward with it, which I will explain shortly. And we're looking into how we can improve the product. Now, if I just go to this conference, which is a test that I set up for the ACTU, who I've also been showing this software to in Australia. But this is an example conference. Now, what you can see here is a very simple piece of software, but what the technology behind it is not simple. So, and it allows us to do weighted votes. For those on the call who don't know how that process works, essentially you have if you have 1,000 votes for Waltham Forest district and 5 delegates turn up, then 200 get the vote. If only 4 turn up, then you have to redistribute it. So it's 220 per person. This computer system does that automatically, and I'll show you in a second how it does that. Here you can see what delegates can see, and I have also prepared the voting screen. So this is what a delegate sees when they click on their unique link, but we'll come back to that shortly. But you can see what they can see through here. Here you have a speaker timer, so you can set a speaker timer so that the delegates know how long there is to go. You can also have observer status as well as delegate status, so people can come along and watch the voting without actually being able to vote. Here you can see which delegates are online. So at the moment there's only 1 delegate online, which is my test account. But if you need to quickly get a unique link for someone, this is how you can do it. So if I so then you sort of have the settings feature. So in settings, you can change the name of it to whatever you want, but then you can see the results, and you can see the users and delegates, and you can grant access to the spreadsheets. In here is the danger zone, where you can delete everything. I insisted on adding this because I've had experiences before where people accidentally delete everything. So you do need the option to delete stuff, but you just need to make it safe. So just a double there. Now, how this process works is by a process of Magic Sheets, which is a proprietary software that we've built. What it is when you put this data in real time, it creates these links here. On the right hand side, which are the unique links. So all you have to do is load this into your email CRM or text message platform and send it to people, or send it to them directly. and then you can just edit here, and you can edit the district vote allegations here. So like how every district would have a name and a vote count. So let's see if I can make this work now. So if it works correctly, in a few seconds, this should magically create the link. I hope it works. It works most of the time, and it worked when I tested it before I did this demonstration. So I very much hope it does work now. It is a bit fiddly, so you need to make sure that everything is typed in correctly. Right. Well, I'll come back to that in a minute, and hopefully it will have generated by then. Sometimes it takes a few seconds to do that. So here you can edit the users and districts, and you can see the motion results. So if I just close this, so then you can go down here and you can see the motions. So it's very easy. During our conference, the chair was coming up with votes and procedural motions, and I was doing it in real time, which is one of the reasons why we wanted this software, because it wasn't pre-ordered. We were just coming up with it, and it was enabling votes. So if we do this, and we do one member, one vote, and we do a 30-second duration. Hi, this is a test. Save that. So that should pop up in a second and be and there it is. So that's an on-more vote. I haven't locked the conference yet, or started the conference, so you can't vote. So what I'll do now is I'll now start the conference. So you can now see it's gone like that. And if we go to the demonstration link, we're now in, and it says you are logged in as an example user, district for test, but you could have a vote for being executive member or anything really. At the moment, district allegations are unlocked, so that means that you can have a weighted vote. You can't have a weighted vote, sorry. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to lock delegates. What this does is it means that if you're not there after this point, you will not be able to vote. So we wanted this to ensure that there was a cutoff and to ensure that we could do the weighted votes properly. So now I lock delegates, we can now launch a vote. So you can see here it's locked it. I'll just, before I launch a vote, I'll just show you the timer so you can have a look at that. Just put in, the thing about the time is you have to remember to start it, and during our conference I forgot a few times, so got in trouble for that. But here's the timer ticking down, and as I said, it's an observer status, so you'll be able to see this as well as being able to vote. If I just go down to launch here, so all I have to do is this, and this will pop up in a few seconds with the TAD. So it shows the number of votes. I'm not allowed to publish the result until it's taken place. Sorry, my computer's just gone a bit crazy. Right, so here I can vote. I'm going to vote for. I'm going to vote. So I've now voted. All my votes have been used, and I'm waiting. So in the back end, I can see that a vote has been cast by me, and it has been voted for. So the result is now over. At our conference, I verified the votes with the senior staff who were there, and then once we were agreed, we've actually added the tie functionality, because during our conference we didn't have a tie functionality, and we had a tie, unbelievably, of like all the delegates there was an actual tie. So I'll explain about that in a minute. But then if I put published, this will, on the other screen, show that the results. So it will show carried, and it will show the number and the percentage, and so on. So so then you can move on to you can then basically start the timer again, and then move on to the next vote. And then if you want to see the actual results, so you can see these are the results, and you can see how people voted. So you can see how people voted, but obviously there is security and GDPR implications. You can also turn that functionality off, but we did want to record just for security purposes, and so on. So So I think, yeah, that is the software and how it works. That's sort of like a simple demonstration. So just a few more points to make before I wrap up. So in terms of the actual conference itself, we in a socially distanced way, a team of staff were in the NEU building, and I was administrating the Zoom and the NEU democracy software at the same time. In hindsight, that was not the right decision because I was doing both things, but we had the developers there on the day to ensure that if anything went wrong, that they were able to assist it. We did have some teething issues. So with any new software, obviously you need to make sure that people are aware of how to use it. We did it. I filmed the video and we did a training session for all the delegates on Zoom in advance, and we sent numerous text messages and Zoom instructions. And we also set a deadline for accreditation. Unfortunately, a few people missed the deadline for accreditation and turned up to the Zoom and wanted to have a vote, which I'm sure you all experience. So we had to deal with that, and we had to add lots of new people on the day, and as a result, it broke the software. But because we had the developers in position, we were able to overcome that. And then we had senior staff verifying the results. The chair was in the Robin Bevan, our president, was in the other room. So when we had the tie, which was fairly extraordinary, we were able to confer and decide what to do, and he cast his casting vote in favour of the motion. So then it carried, but it went very smoothly, very effectively, and as I say, we had 70,000 registered votes from about 650 delegates, all of whom managed to understand the software. So in terms of like next steps, some people on this call may already be in discussions with us. Our general secretaries, Kevin Courtney and Mary Bosted, decided that they wanted to share this software with the union movement. So if any of you watching this call are interested in having discussions, please do send me an email. Get my email from John, and I'm happy to have a discussion with you in the new year about it, because we want to share in the spirit of mutual collaboration. And I know that other unions are talking to our developers about adding new software and moving forward. In terms of how we're moving forward with the product, we're creating a product called NEU Conference for our conference in April. What that will do is that will actually embed video software itself within the software. So it will also have a digital dashboard that will allow you to select which fringes you want to go to from the agenda. And then it will automatically display them for you within it and allow you to vote if necessary. So we're keeping NEU Democracy as a separate software, but we will be integrating it with NEU Conference, which we'll be building for next year. So the only other thing to add is not just on the software, it's sort of on the accessibility. One of the challenges we've had this year is making sure that everyone is included, and we've invested heavily in subtitle software. We use software called Verbit, which is very reliable. It's an AI system that uses human corrections to make sure it's 100% accurate. And we install that on all of our calls because we had some problems with some other less reliable software that got people's name wrongs in quite an embarrassing way. So we did that, and we also provide BSL interpretation on all of our calls using the Unite NIBSLE branch. We have a very productive relationship with them, and I found that the accessibility stuff has worked well. So that's kind of my introduction. Apologies if I've taken too long. If you have any questions, please do put in the chat, and thank you for the opportunity to share what we've been doing in the NEU. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mike. That was very interesting. I've certainly got a question to ask later on. So yes, great. Good to hear that you managed to deliver something and create something so quickly. So I'd like to now introduce Sarah from the STUC. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Mike, for your presentation. That was really fascinating, and certainly given me some food for thought. But I just thought I would start off with a little bit of background about our Congress. So I recently returned to the STUC as Director of Operations, and I have, like Michelle, responsibility for the delivery of our annual Congress. So it normally happens in April each year in a different city, somewhere in Scotland, over 3 days. We have around 300 delegates who attend, plus invited guests and speakers. And in 2020, we were due to be holding our Congress in Perth Concert Hall. So by the time lockdown happened in March, we were all ready to go the next month. All our plans had been in place, obviously, for a long, long time before. And then at that point, our General Council took the decision to postpone to November. Obviously, we all hoped at that point that by November, we wouldn't, it'd just be a distant memory and we'd all be back to normal. So when I returned to the STUC in August, plans for a much smaller socially distanced Congress were in place for November. But then it quickly became apparent that that was also not going to be possible. So 6 weeks before Congress was due to take place, the decision was taken to move to a fully digital event. Now, like TUC and lots of other organisations, we had been running lots of very successful online events and built up a lot of skills in that area: webinars, training, committee meetings, our general council meetings, etc. So at first we did consider running Congress in-house as a big webinar or something along those lines. But we're a very small team at the STUC, and whilst we generally do punch well above our weight in terms of our output and what we can deliver for such a small team, we did take the decision that we would look to bring in some external support, some expert support, to help us pull off a really high quality event. So obviously this is our showpiece event. It is a really important event in movement in Scotland. It's a way that we can show our priorities and our demands, and that had never been more important than this year. And we really didn't want, we wanted it to have as much impact as possible. So what I'm going to cover today is basically what that external support looked like, the different platforms that we used. I'll explain how we managed our votes throughout Congress. I'll talk about some of the feedback that we got from our delegates, and then share some thoughts on what we're thinking about doing for our next Congress, which is only around the corner in April next year. And at this stage, unless there is a massive change in circumstance, it's very likely to be another digital event. So I've got some slides that I'll show you just with some screen grabs from the event, but I'll put them up at the appropriate point. So we worked with a company called Captioning Live, who were recommended to us, and we got some really positive references from other organisations who'd used them for their online conferences. And they were just really fantastic to work with. Now, because not only were they experts in their field in terms of delivering online events, but a lot of the team that we worked with were trade union members themselves. So they understood our work, they understood the kind of structure of our events, what we were trying to replicate. And that was really, really important for us. There are very few organisations who run the type of events that we do in the movement. Conferences are 6 and a half a dozen, but large democratic events like Congress or political conferences are different from what the majority of events companies are used to supporting. And so it was really important to us that we found a company to work with that understood us and understood what we were about. And I think we did find the right fit. So when we first met with Captioning Live, we had already had a draft order of business in place, and our General Council had put a massive amount of work into reducing our usual 3-day programme into a 1-day event that covered all the necessary constitutional business. So that was basically our starting point. That's what we began the discussions with. And bearing in mind, as I said earlier, we were 6 weeks away from the date that this event had to happen on. So we had to make some really quick decisions and really prioritise what we wanted at Congress. So we did end up, Captioning Live did end up recommending that we used a combination of different platforms. And I'll share my screen now so that you can see the first slide. Let me just pop this up. Here we go. So this is a platform called Hopin. It's a web-based specialised event platform. Now, what this did is we didn't want to just have a live stream or anything like that. We wanted a private space that only registered delegates would be able to enter. And then we live streamed the sections that we wanted to live stream to Facebook and our website. So within here, you can see this is the sort of reception area. So once they clicked the registration link that had been sent direct to them from the events company, they clicked it, entered their name and address, their name and email, and they arrived into this part here. So this opened up about a week before Congress, maybe 5 days before. And so what we encouraged delegates to do was to come in, familiarise themselves, and they introduce themselves and the chat box here. This is just a blank version that we've been given for this purpose, but we would go in every day and we could see that people were saying hello and chatting, which was really nice. So we provided all the branding for the event page. So as you can see, that had our Congress theme, the hashtag, etc. on it. And so the important thing is that why we decided to go for this is that, as I mentioned, we had private sessions that were only for delegates. So, for example, the financial statement, the treasurer's report, etc. So this platform enabled us to be sure that it was only available to registered delegates. So once Congress was due to go live, delegates would click on this button here, the live stage, and they would enter this area. Now, this is like the digital equivalent of entering the Congress Hall and taking your seat. So here, this is where the live broadcast would appear, and you had another chat box where delegates could comment and share thoughts throughout the day. Now, we had over 200 delegates, maybe 220, sorry, start the day with us, and we saw very, very little drop off, which we were both surprised and very pleased about, because it was an all-day online event. Okay, and whilst we put in lots of breaks and other things, it wasn't just speaker after speaker. We did expect that people might, at some point, but that figure held steady until the very, very end. So once they were in this area, as I said, this is where the speakers would appear. And we used another platform for the speakers. Now, I say we had nothing to do with this side of things, and this is where the expert help came in. But anyway, I've got some things to show you about that. Just one wee point I wanted to make about the chat box down the side. Now, what I thought was a really nice touch is that we got that transcript downloaded and sent to us, and that will actually be going into the archives along with everything else from this year's Congress. So we were still able to replicate, reproduce that and store that for future, which we thought was, that's an important part of our Congress, as part of our history. And this year it was no different. It just was in a different form. So I'll show you now the platform that Cameron used for the speakers. Oh, there's a nice, that's what the live feed looked like. So that was the speakers at home, as you can see, and our sign language interpreter who was on screen at all times. But that's what it looked like. And again, we provided all the branding for that. So it was looked really slick and high quality. But that was mainly because of what was going on behind the scenes, which is this here. Now, I have just taken this off the vMix website. This platform is called vMix. It's a live production and streaming software. That's what it looks like. As I said, that's as much as involvement as we had in this. So I'll just stop sharing my screen now and I'll go back. Okay, so I will tell you a bit about how it worked. So the vMix platform has basically 8 live calls. So that means that you can only have 8 speakers in each section of Congress. So one of those was dedicated to our president, Jackson Cullinane, and one was for our sign language interpreter, leaving 6 slots for other speakers. Now, just to explain, at Congress, we normally have over 200 speakers, okay? Aside for time restrictions, any delegate who wants to speak on a motion are able to, from our smallest affiliates, trades councils, equality committees, right up to our biggest affiliates. It's a very, very participative and democratic event. So to go from that to only being able to have about 30 speakers was a big challenge for us, but luckily that was not my responsibility to try and whittle that down. I was just provided with the list. And what we did is that we had to have all the speakers confirmed beforehand. There could be no just on the spot contributions, which was a huge change for us, because as I said, that is the nature of our event. If you want to say something, come up and say it. It had to be all planned beforehand. Now, the reason for that was because the company, Captioning Live, carried out what they called a touch call with every speaker beforehand, and that was only 15 minutes, and all the speakers were just fantastic about just, you know, it was new for them, but they just all really got on with it and done the call. And the call basically went through, they tested their internet connection, they tested their webcam, they tested their speakers, and they made sure that every individual knew what was going to happen, which was such a big help, because this was totally new to us. Although we'd all been doing Zoom and everything, this was new and it was different. So that was really, really important sort of prep for everybody, so that every speaker felt super comfortable before they came on. Another benefit of using the vMix platform was that it allowed the technicians to speak what they call in the ear of the speakers without it being broadcast. So again, if anything was to go wrong, which it didn't, but it could have, they would have been there. So, you know, sometimes, you know, you're not sure, you're like, am I live? Am I not live? What's going on? Can you see me? There was none of that. Every speaker, you know, had a person speaking to them. And that was particularly important for Jackson as president, because he was on screen pretty much for the full shebang. He was on screen. He came in between every speaker. And really, another point I would like to say is that a large part of the success of our event was because we had such an amazing chair in Jackson as our president. He is a masterclass in chairing an event, and he was so in control of the whole situation, even though it was new to him as well. But that was a real big, a real important factor in terms of why our event was so successful, is that Jackson was able to be the thread that kept everything going and just dealt with any changes that we had to make. Just seamlessly. It was fantastic. We also had a WhatsApp group chat set up with Jackson, our event manager Angus, who was like the man in the ear to all the speakers, so he could, you know, we could discuss anything, and then a few members of the secretariat in case any constitutional or policy questions came up. And then that just allowed us to, you know, say for example, a couple of the speakers didn't turn up at their allocated time, so we had to rejig, or you know, say we'll get on the phone to them and find out what's happening. So we had various ways for us to keep in touch. We had every speaker's mobile phone number, for example, already prepared so that we could phone them if needed, and that was also given over to the firm as well, so that if they needed to get in touch, they could. Sort of belts and braces approach. Now, another sort of consideration for us was that in between these chunks of 8 speakers, we needed at least 20 minutes swap over time between. So we had to use, as I said, we had lots of breaks, which was good anyway, because people needed breaks in between the debates and the discussion sessions. And then we also had lots and lots of videos. So another reason why we needed expert help is that our campaigns and comms team, who would be responsible for the sort of delivery, we needed them focusing on making all that amazing content that really made the event so special. So they've done a power of work in terms of getting great videos together and really using that as an opportunity to replace some of the bits that we had to lose. Do you know what I mean? So it allowed us to make sure a range of voices were heard, a range of our campaign priorities were heard, you know, throughout the day, but also had a benefit in terms of the technical delivery side of things as well. So that worked really, really well. The live stream between the different platforms was viewed by about 500 people throughout the day, which for us is fantastic, and we were super, super pleased about that. Obviously, what some people said is that even if they were a delegate, because they could pause it and come back and start it going again, that was really great. You know, if they had to take a meeting or a call, they didn't feel like they missed out on anything, which again is really great. So in terms of our voting, compared to Mike's presentation there, we went, although we had a very high-tech solution in terms of the delivery, the broadcast of the event, for our votes, we went for a very low-tech solution, mainly because we only had 3 card votes to do. And we considered using the polling function within Hopin, which, you know, we discussed we could do that. But again, like Mike said, there was lots of concerns around, you know, it was only delegation leaders who were to vote, and how would we control that only they voted? How would we get it verified? We have tellers at Congress, they would have to verify it. So, and bearing in mind, again, time is of the essence, we have 6 weeks, and the best option we went for is we used SurveyMonkey. Really simple, but really effective. So ahead of Congress, we emailed the delegation leaders 3 individual links, card vote 1, card vote 2, card vote 3, very, very clearly labelled once you got in what was going on. And so they had them, and then at the appropriate points, Jackson instructed delegates to use the link, place the vote. They done it very, very quickly. We downloaded it, emailed it over to the tellers. They had already done a little dress rehearsal, so they knew what to expect. It was very simple. They were all 100% support. So it wasn't like there was a big job of work to verify them. I can only imagine if we were, looking towards next year, we may need to look at something a little bit more in depth, like Mike just explained. And that's why I thought that was very, very interesting what in Mike's presentation covered. I think we might be in touch. But for us, the SurveyMonkey worked great. It worked really well. We just then reported the results to Jackson via the WhatsApp group, and he announced it to Congress. And then we just followed it up with an email to all delegates, just in case people weren't looking at the screen at that individual point. So, as I said, we had we done an evaluation after the event, as we always do. Very positive. Over 90% of respondents rated the event excellent or very good, which was just, was really great. We had great comments from speakers, from our general counsel, from invited guests that had provided videos, etc. What they enjoyed about it was the focused nature of the event, and it was very tight and ran to schedule and was very clear what was happening. People loved the video contributions. They liked that they didn't need to travel. They liked that they didn't need to, take time away from work, that they could fit it in their day. Many felt that it was very, very inclusive being online and very more representative. And that probably, as I said at the beginning, we put a lot of work in trying to make that happen. So it was good that that was recognised. Obviously, to be expected with 200 people, some people did have some technical problems, mainly to do with their own connections and things as delegates. And also people did miss interacting with each other more, and the kind of more social aspect of Congress. But they recognised why we had to make those choices. So it was, whilst it was in an ideal world, it wasn't like an actual complaint from anybody. And folk loved the chat box down the side. They really loved that, catching up with people, people that they haven't seen for a long time, especially given everything that was going on. They still felt they were able to connect. So as I said, we're looking forward to our next Congress already in a couple of months, next April. We've not had final decision from General Counsel on what we're going to do, but we're pretty sure it'll probably be another virtual event. So we are looking at how we can use different areas within Hopin. They have, you can have multiple live stages. You can have, there's a virtual expo area where we can invite our exhibitors in to have virtual exhibition space, which, they were we really missed them this year. So it'd be great if we could somehow bring them back. We only used a very, very, very small part of that platform because of the time scale. Basically, we just had to prioritise. It was delegates and speakers. That was our main priority. But there are other things that we would like to look at expanding. There's also, we can also, we may not be able to have the same free debates like we always have, but we could look at maybe, smaller groups of focus debates going into, smaller rooms and then coming back to vote. So that's what we're kind of working through at the moment. But overall, it was a fantastic success. Mainly, I would say, obviously from our end, there was a lot of organisation, but making that decision to bring in the expert help was really really contributed to how well it went overall, and finding that right fit with them, which we really feel that we did. And obviously starting planning for April, we're already starting from a kind of higher point than we were. So yes, happy to take any questions, or as I said, share any of the details of the platforms that we used if anybody is interested in finding out more. But, thanks, I'll hand back to you, Michelle.
Great, no, thank you, Sarah. That's really interesting, and it's reassuring to hear of similar approaches undertaken that we did as well. So we're all kind of moving in the same direction. So it sounds really good. I was really pleased to hear how well it went, and using all the different platforms as well. I think people realised that once they started organising a virtual event, it's not actually less work. In fact, it's a lot more work. We found we had to bring in a lot more staff to help with things like the speaker management, which it sounds like you use an external company for. So I have got one question. So people are welcome to put in questions in the Q&A box, and these are the questions for either Sarah or Mike. Now there's one question. I've got a question for Mike, and there's also a question just asking about the verbatim supplier again. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, Mike, was from the display, the screen display, it looks to me that anybody could find out the name of a delegate and find their email address on screen quite easily. And I just wondered how that fitted in with data protection, because I wondered if you had a policy on that, because yes, that's sometimes it will be people's personal email addresses. So Mike, if you could answer that. And then Sarah, I just wanted to ask you, come to you as well on the feedback, because we did online surveys after Congress, and we get a very poor response rate, and sometimes we provide incentives to complete the online survey, but it's very I think it was a very small number of replies, and it's always the same for any surveys that we distribute online. It's a small percentage return. So I just wondered how yours went. So Mike, if you could just respond to those 2 points and then come over to Sarah. Thanks.
Great. Okay, so first of all, I've seen that Helen Watson, the head of communications of the NEU, is now on this call. She wasn't before, so she missed me thanking her for her championing of our digital data and tech agenda. So I just wanted to repeat the thank you so that she heard it. In terms of the specific questions, so on the GDPR issue, so we work with our GDPR officer to make sure that everything is compliant, but the only people who can see the email addresses and the names are the administrator. So when I was showing the demonstration, you could see both the admin panel and the voting panel. The only people who can see the admin panel are the administrators. In the case of the NEU, that means it's me and me alone. So literally nobody else can see it. Our developers are able to see it, and then a few other select people at the NEU have logins, but we're very serious about security. Our developers are under legal contract and under GDPR data agreement and all that kind of stuff. All the data is held within the UK. So very few people get to see that side of the platform, which is the reason why I showed you a test version today, not the actual version, so you can see the real life data for that reason. So hopefully that answers your question, Michelle, on that one. In terms of Verbit and the accessibility software, I'd just like to expand on that quickly. So we investigated a number of platforms because at the start of COVID, a lot of the existing systems got the name of one of our senior members of staff wrong and replaced it with a swear word rather than her actual name. And obviously this was a real problem, and this happened on a number of different platforms. So we needed to make sure that we got the system that was right for us. The two that stood out were Otter, which is in the Otter.ai, which is a startup which provides transcription services, and I believe Zoom are going to be using them shortly. It only works on meetings, doesn't work on webinars, and it's automated, so there's no human interaction. It's just you click and you go, and it's not as good as the second option, which I'll come on to. The result is about 70% accurate, not 100%, but it's good if you're having just a normal meeting and you need it. So we bought it for that purposes, but I found that Verbit is a better software to work with. It works on our webinars, and we have it on all the National Education Union webinars, including our conference. A lot of people like to download the transcript, because you can download a transcript as well as seeing the subtitles live on the screen. How Verbit works is it has a process of AI automation, but then there's a human on the line to actually correct the software, and it's very easy to install. It's uses the closed captioning service on Zoom for those who know the product. So you can just install, you register the event with Verbit, then they arrive, and you give them API token access, and then they're going, and it's very accurate. Our feedback is that people very much like it. The only downside of Verbit is that it's expensive. It is expensive. That is so it wouldn't be. It would be the right thing for set piece events, but not for others. the other thing to say about Verbit is in the case of Wales, for example, Verbit doesn't currently, but within the next 6 months we'll have translation services. So if you were speaking in Welsh, it will translate it to English. If you're speaking English, you'll translate it to Welsh live on the screen. They've told me that functionality was about 6 to 12 months away. So
Okay.
that would be very interesting.
Thank you. I'm just going to move over to Sarah. I've got a couple more questions I'd like Sarah to respond to as well, because I think we were due to finish at 3. I'm just wondering a little bit about time, but thank you. That was very comprehensive. Sarah, Luke was asking, I'm going to ask you to respond to these additional questions. Luke was asking about decisions on the length of time of sessions and the frequency and the number of breaks. And then someone else was asking about the BSL interpretation service. Were people able to switch off the view of the interpreters when, if they didn't need the service to, sometimes it can be a little bit distracting. Thanks, Sarah.
I'll start on your first question, Michelle, which was around the survey responses. This was the first year that we did it digitally using SurveyMonkey. Normally it's a paper form that's given to delegates. We actually increased their return rate. We were hitting about 60% return rate from delegates, which, it was an improvement, so we were happy with that. And that was actually shown across both the evaluation and their quality monitoring form, which again also was both refreshed and done digitally this year. And we're looking at digitising a lot of our Congress processes, and that was just one of the sort of start of that. In terms of breaks, as I said, we 2 things dictated the breaks. First was that we had to do these behind the scenes swap over, so no session was longer than about an hour and a half. I think that was our longest. And also because we were very keen that it was an enjoyable event, and that we were given we were basically adhering to safe ways of working in terms of looking at a screen for a certain amount of time, etc. So we sort of we were very conscious we could have squeezed more in, but we decided to prioritise those breaks. Some of the breaks we combined with a video break, if you know what I mean. So we had something playing while people were away. Others breaks were very key, but as I said, we had more breaks than you would have at a normal Congress. But an hour and a half, I think most sessions were an hour. Most were an hour. And then the BSL, no, that was a fixed presence throughout the day, just like we have at Congress. You always see the signer. One thing that we didn't do this year, and we should have put that in place, was live captioning throughout Congress. We're looking at that. We're actually just looking at using a stenographer who'll do live feed over the event. But I'm interested in the software that you said, Mike, because obviously we caption our events afterwards quite often, like our webinars and things. So it may be that we would look at getting something that we could use across all our events. But it certainly is something that we want to prioritise. And it was definitely lacking from Congress. So
yes, we had feedback from Congress as well about the captioning, because we provided it to people specifically who requested it, not everybody en masse. But I must admit, we did use I was in a Zoom meeting and we tested out the automatic transcript, and I was surprised at how high the quality and accuracy of it was. So that was quite good. But useful to know about these other companies. Now we actually are running out of time, I'm afraid. So I'll just see if there's one more question that can be a very short question. I'm not sure if Sarah, I think this is probably a Sarah question, maybe it's a Mike question. What was the reaction to restricting the number of attendees? Did you restrict the number, or did you have the same number?
No, we had the same amount of delegates, but we had a very restricted number of speakers. As I said, it was, went from about over 200 to 30. People were very understanding. Not all our affiliates were able to speak, though. If we have more affiliates than 30, and that's regrettable. But it was just we tried. Everybody got a chance to amend the statements. There was lots of behind the scenes participation and democracy, but we just couldn't fit everybody in, because we obviously had our quality committee, competence delegates, that's why we're really looking to expand that for next year, because whilst everyone was a very understanding, it's still not ideal, you know, like everybody understood, but if there is ways that we can increase that, it probably won't just be a one-day event. So hopefully, you know, we'd be able to expand that. But yeah, everyone was like, we're just happy that we're here, and we've been, it's you know, we're being able to get together in some capacity. But that was 1 year only, you know. It's got to expand, because it's a very, very important event for us. So
great, thank you, Sarah. So I think we should wrap up now, because we've been on this call for quite a while. I'm sure people have got lots to get on with. So I want to thank everyone for coming along, and I particularly want to thank Sarah and Mike for their excellent presentations.
no problem.
We'll be able to follow up things afterwards. I think it's very interesting. I'm quite interested to hear about the offer from NEU to use this software, so that's maybe worth looking at, but also to hear about these different platforms to use. So it's definitely food for thought. But so I want to thank everybody and wish you all a good break, and hopefully we'll have more webinars in the future. There may be a blog, or we may promote, I think we'll be able to distribute this film at some point in the near future, possibly in the new year, but next week if we have a chance. But thank you so much, particularly to the NEU and the STUC, and just take care, everyone, and see you in the new year. Thank you.
And thank you, Michelle, for your excellent sharing.
Yeah,
thank you
thanks,
very
Michelle
much.
and John.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.